Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pachani Nirvisesha Sunyavari Paskachada Satarani Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So we are belatedly going to narrate some Jayananda pastimes. Jayananda, well, I guess I could start with that. There is Prabhupada's letter, but let me pass this around first. These are some photos of Jayananda Prabhu. And the first sheet is Jayananda with Srila Prabhupada. And the other sheet is, well, they're self-explanatory. He is in Samadhi in Mayapur. And this is Jayananda working on the Ratha Yatra cart. And the friend of all living entities. So this is, as a preface, let me read Srila Prabhupada's letter. This is May 5th, and when was it? 1976? He passed away. Yes, that would make sense. Okay. My dear Jayananda, please accept my blessings. I am feeling very intensely your separation. This is Prabhupada's letter to him. In 1967, you joined me in San Francisco. You were driving my car and chanting Hare Krishna. You were the first man to give me some contribution of significance, $5,000, for printing my Bhagavad Gita. After that, you have rendered very favorable service to Krishna in many different ways. I so hope that at the time of your death, remind me to tell you about the time of his death, you were remembering Krishna, and as such, that you have been promoted to the eternal association of Krishna. If not, if you had any tinge of material desire, you have gone to the celestial kingdom to live with the demigods for many thousands of years and enjoy the most opulent life of material existence. From there you can promote yourself to the spiritual world. But even if one fails to promote oneself to the spiritual world, at that time, at the end of one's life in the celestial kingdom, he comes down again to the surface of this globe and takes birth in a big family like a yogi's or a Brahmin's, or an aristocratic family where there's every chance of reviving his Krishna consciousness. But, as you were hearing Krishna Kirtan, the chanting of Hare Krishna, I am sure that you were directly promoted to Krishna Loka. Janma karma chame divyam evam yo viditatata chakva deharpanar janma naiti mamiti sorjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my, Krishna's, appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna, from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna has done a great favor to you by not continuing your diseased body. He had leukemia, severe leukemia, and has given you a suitable place for your service. Thank you very much. And Mukunda Goswami writes, the way Jayananda left his body, he was in Los Angeles, and his body was completely racked by leukemia. Most people's analysis was that he put about 80 years of service in 40 years, and just his body just couldn't keep up with it. Before I forget, well, I'll finish this. The way he left his body was he was in Los Angeles. In those days, we had the old clunky reel-to-reel, you put in a cassette, and they had it fixed on endless loop, so it was Prabhupada Bhajan. The man couldn't move. He had absolutely no strength. His body was just finished, riddled like Swiss cheese with leukemia and cancer and just, And the last thing he did was he, lying flat, tape player by his head, he lifted up his head, boom, put his head right on top of the tape player and left his body. It's pretty far out. He got as close to Srila Prabhupada as he possibly could and then left his body within just immediately thereafter. To give an example, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me this story. Prabhupada originally loitering in New York City with no place, no support. Prabhupada talks about it. It was the coldest winter on record, 1965. Prabhupada arrives in New York, going to the library to see that his Bhagavatam was being checked out. Going to see the Scindia ship line. When does the next ship leave? Just to make sure he could get out of New York. I mean, just so many things. And then 1977, 76, I'm not sure the year, when they've had that first big Ratha Yatra in New York City. And Jayananda organized the thing, built the carts. I mean, it's just, and somehow or other they got permission. Even Donald Trump, somehow or other, against all odds, gave permission for them to build the Roth cart. And he just purchased the railway yards in New York because they needed a place to build, and no one would do it, no one for insurance. And it's a whole story, somehow or other. So against all odds, they built the beautiful Roth carts. They got permission to go down Fifth Avenue, which is the parade route of America's heroes. Who was it? Eisenhower, after winning World War II, is the Supreme Commander-in-Chief after the guys went to the moon. Lindbergh after crossing the Atlantic. American heroes. They went down Fifth Avenue for a ticker tape parade. It's like considered the greatest honor American can give you, one of the greatest honors. And here is Prabhupada sailing down Fifth Avenue with Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe, to just an absolute perfect weather, a fantastic Ratha Yatra. And Jayananda was the organizer, was the fundraiser, was just everything, built the carts. So, after the Ratha Yatra, in the evening, early evening, big sannyasis, big GBCs, big temple presidents, they're all sitting with Prabhupada. Prabhupada's darshan room. Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me this personally. Prabhupada looked out. He said, "Where is Jayananda?" They said, "Oh, Prabhupada, he's working on one of the Sankirtan vans." Prabhupada said, "Go and get him." So they went down to get Jayananda. Now, because, Sankirtan, there was the Radha Damodar party, was at its peak. So they found Jayananda in the basement, in the garage, underneath one of the Sankirtan vans, fixing it so the devotees could get back out. Sunday was the festival. Monday they wanted to hit the road. So there's Jayananda fixing the van. Overalls, He's got 3 or 4 people he's preaching to. All you can see is his feet, and even though he's underneath doing whatever he's doing, he's preaching, which was his famous, whatever. That's another story, and it'll be in here. So the devotee comes and says, Prabhupada wants to see you. Jayananda says, I'm covered with grease, and, by the time I clean up, Prabhupada, he's just trying to encourage me. He doesn't really want to see me. Just tell him thank you a millionfold, and I'll just stay here. Devotee goes back up, tells Prabhupada, Prabhupada, he says he's working, he's, too unclean and embarrassed to come before you. Prabhupada said, "Go and get him and tell him I will not speak until he comes." Prabhupada just sat in silence. Adikesh, who was the temple president, big sannyasi, big guy at those days, went down and said, you got to come. Prabhupada's not speaking till you come. Don't clean up, don't just come. So he washed his hands, washed his face, came up in his overalls, and sat down in the darshan. Prabhupada didn't say anything. Prabhupada just was happy to see him. He sat down. And Tamal told me that Jayananda, the man had been working for weeks. Probably the first time he'd really sat down, immediately fell asleep. So skinny little brahmachari nudged him, he woke up, he's in the back there, and after just a few minutes, immediately he fell asleep again. Second time, brahmachari woke him up. Third time, skinny little brahmachari, whoever it was, goes to wake up Jayananda. Prabhupada says, do not touch him. Prabhupada didn't miss a thing, saw the whole thing. Prabhupada said, do not touch him. He is doing more service than all of you combined. And Prabhupada was perfectly happy to just see Jayananda, even though he was so exhausted, he was falling asleep. So it just gives you an idea of the Jayananda's position. So with that as a startup, and here's Mukunda Maharaj's letter. The following is a quote from Srila Prabhupada's letter to Rameswar regarding Jayananda's passing. Jayananda's death is glorious. It is very good that he has stated that what is the use of this useless body? Better to give it up. He has left the body very wonderfully, and he has been transferred to Vaikuntha. I have already sent a condolence letter, that's the letter we read, for publication in Back to Godhead magazine. Everyone should follow the example of Jayananda. This is far out. I am very proud that I had such a nice disciple. What more accolade could a devotee want? That your Guru Maharaj says, I'm very pleased to have such a disciple like you. That is just your ticket punched back to Godhead. If possible, Jayananda's picture should be hung on the Ratha of Lord Jagannath. And in all of our temples, a day must be set aside for holding a festival in his honor, just as we do on the disappearance day of other great Vaishnavas. I mean, that's pretty far out. Certification. Jayananda's disappearance day will be celebrated. So there it's described what we're going to do. Okay, there it is. That's Mukunda Maharaj's letter. And without further ado, and his picture is on Ratha Yatra carts all over ISKCON. Now Jayananda, although completely blissful, he was nobody's fool. This was a devotee, his name was Rohini Sutta, Bhaktaran. He gave Jayananda his entire savings, moved into the Brooklyn temple, and gave the temple $1,000, his entire savings. Next morning, changed his mind, said, wait a minute, I'm leaving and I want my money back. So he was going to go ask Jayananda for the money. And when they opened the curtains for the deities, Jayananda had made a garland out of $100 bills, folded them up nicely, green, everybody's favorite color, and always fresh, and had hung it around Srimati Radharani. So when Bhaktaran showed up and asked for his money back, Jayananda said, well, what can we do? We've offered it to Radharani. We can't take it back. And he said, well, he kind of accepted that, and to this day, he's a devotee. He said Jayananda saved him. If it hadn't been a garland on Radharani, he would have taken his money back. But he thought, well, geez, that kind of seals the deal. Shows his sincerity. So that's Jayananda's cleverness. I have a personal experience. I was a bhakta, trying to become a bhakta, a new devotee. This is summer of 1970. And the LA devotees, we would all go up and help with the Los Angeles Ratha Yatra, with the San Francisco Ratha Yatra, because it was a big deal. Devotees everywhere east of the Mississippi, devotees would fly in and take part in the San Francisco Ratha Yatra. I mean, it was an amazing. To give you a flavor of the thing, the 3 carts are sailing down. Prabhupada sitting on Subhadra's cart. I think he was on Subhadra. Maybe he was on Jagannath's in front. Anyway, I think it was in Jagannath's actually in front. And there were some cars blocking the road. We couldn't get the cart past. There were so many devotees. We were so enthusiastic. I swear to you, they just picked up, 40 people, just picked up one of the cars, put it on the sidewalk, picked up another car, but just moved 3 cars, left them there. I mean, who knows? But anyway, the devotees just sailed on, And just to finish it, because it's so blissful, we may take 2 days doing this. Went all the way through Golden Gate Park. Thousands of people came down the road, and then there was an old hippie concert hall. It's called the Family Dog Auditorium. It had been an old Shriners hall, and it was where they had concerts, and the devotees had reserved that. And outside there was it's a whole story. There was the Black Panthers decided to attack the Hare Krishnas. These wimpy guys in skirts, mostly white. Let's beat them up. The Hells Angels had the same idea. Let's beat up these wimpy guys in skirts, And there was some kind of perverted Kshatriya spirit when unannounced, both groups arrived. I swear, I was there. Both groups arrived, and they determined, well, why fight with these wimpy vegetarian Hare Krishnas? Let's fight with each other. And in back of Balaram's cart, there was about 40 Hells Angels and about 40, 50 Black Panthers, and they went at it hammer and tong. They were devoted. They were trying to climb up on the Rath cart ball and jump off on each other. The devotees were tossing them off the cart. It was a whole scene going on in the back. At the end of the thing, they kind of got it out of their system, and they followed the Rath cart. So they followed the whole parade, and they actually came into the Shriners, and now it was called the Family Dog Auditorium, where they had all the hippie concerts and all the light shows and so many different things. And Bhavananda Prabhu had gotten barbecue grills, those funky barbecue grills, filled them full of coals, about 4 or 5 of them, because the whole place smelled like cigars and meat and alcohol and throw up. That was the nature of the place. So he put these barbecue grills all around, filled them full of charcoal, and then dumped piles of that church frankincense incense. We burn it on the altar sometimes. The actual resin crystals. Smelled fantastic, and the whole place was full of smoke. So you've got hippies, you've got straights, you've got Indians, you've got Hells Angels, you've got Black Panthers. This assemblage there, And the Jagannath deities on the stage. Prabhupada came out onto the stage. They had a little Vyasasan there for Prabhupada to sit on. And Prabhupada's presence was so powerful, I swear to you, everybody bowed down. And I remember it had a wood floor because it used to be a dance hall. And to this day, I remember the sound of all the Hells Angels when they bowed down, all their billy clubs, their chains, their helmets, everything hit the floor, and it resonated on the wood floor. And I was thinking, when all the Brahmas bowed down, when Krishna, they all appeared, and that tumultuous sound. So it was an amazing sound. And Prabhupada, the first thing he said, the way he started his lecture, was he said, "My dear frustrated youth of America." And that's who he was talking to. And he was offering the alternative. It wasn't political power. It wasn't black power, gay power, white power. It was spirit, soul power. Harinam power. It was just fantastic. He gave such a powerful lecture. Huge feast afterwards. So that, I don't know how he got off on that, but that gives you the mood of the thing. Oh, so we all went up from Los Angeles, and the devotees came from Portland and from Seattle and Tucson or wherever, Phoenix, where there was temples, Denver. Of course, Laguna Beach and SanDiego. And so I showed up there. I'm there with our brahmacharis, 10, 12 of us from L.A. And my good friend, Danavir Prabhu, had just gotten initiated and had been there the previous year. And they're taking volunteers, and they're assigning people. You're going to go to over to the Berkeley Temple, and that's where they were doing all the cut up, or you're going to stay here and make garlands, or whatever it is, right? Danavir, now Maharaj, punched me in the ribs and said, "Go with Jayananda. Go with Jayananda's party." I didn't know anything. I said, "Okay, fine. Sounds good to me." He told me there'll be great prasadam. Jayananda worked as hard. I was a young man. I used to swim in the ocean 3 miles a day. I mean, I was in great shape. I was absolutely exhausted when we were done. But he, on a little camp stove out at the Rath site, he had this little, one of those green Boy Scout. You ever seen this little Coleman stove? He had a 2-burner Coleman stove. And then somehow or other he had a bunch of Matajis that he'd lined up. And there was probably about 20 of us, hungry young men. And I remember to this day, we had cornbread, we had chili with nice big chunks of paneer, we had halava, and we had a fantastic nectar drink and cookies and salad, as much as you could eat. I mean, it was fantastic. And we worked so hard. So Guru Kripa tells that Guru Kripa showed up. Guru Kripa, used to be a GBC man, sannyasi, and he's a tough guy. Guru Kripa, to this day, Guru Kripa woke up and saw an article in the newspaper. He tells the story. And it said, he saw a picture of these, wimpy guys in skirts, monks, shaped. So he woke up in the morning and he determined, here's where their temple is. He was going to go down and beat up some devotees. He was quite happy, had a full engagement, had a schedule figured out, showed up, and he was built like a fire plug. I mean, that guy, you see, he's a tough cookie. He used to make a living rolling drunks. He's a tough guy. So he shows up, runs into Jayananda. Now, Jayananda was about 6 foot plus. I don't know, 6'2". He was a big guy and all American. He was a solid guy. So he shows up, looking for somebody to take a swing at, not Guru Kripa. Jayananda says, "Hey, you look strong. Can you help me for a minute?" And he said it with such enthusiasm and positive energy, it just spun Guru Kripa around. They were unloading something for the Rath cart, saying, Guru Kripa says the next thing he knew, he'd been working for 5 hours as hard as he could. Jayananda had stuffed him full of prasadam, and he'd never been so happy in his life. That's how he became, just completely turned around by Jayananda's association. So Jayananda worked as hard, and and we were young men, and we got back to the temple. The temple was on Frederick Street. It was right across from Golden Gate Park, and it was tiny. It was, as I recall, memories are fading, but there was just the temple room, and then there was a basement. It was like a boxcar. It was like probably from the wall to here, to where I am. It was long and thin, and then there was a basement, all the brahmacharya, and it was completely packed. There was not a square inch. Karandar and I, we cleared out a broom closet, and that's where we were going to sleep. It's about 10 o'clock at night. Because everyone's just light up like cords of wood. And then we noticed Jayananda, he's sleeping by the front door. And, it was a rough area. It was, there was a lot of, hippies and drug deals and police bus and, a lot of stuff, people getting robbed. It was a rough area. So, Karandar, I was too shy to say a word, but Karandar said, Jayananda, here, we'll sleep out here. You sleep here in this cleaned out broom closet. Because there was at least it was quiet, a little quiet. You could shut the door and there's enough room to at least curl up. Jayananda said, no, it's okay. He said, I don't really like to sleep. He said, I don't, what can I do? It's useless, He said, but I figure if I have to sleep, let me at least lie down by the front door. That way if somebody breaks in, I'll wake up. He had calculated how, as long as he's got to lie down, how can his lying down be service? And he's there as a barricade. If somebody tries to break in, they'll trip over Jayananda, and he'll be able to stop them. I mean, that's a devotee, I'm kind of bouncing around, but I think that's okay. We'll read this thing in a minute. But he was in charge of one of the Radha Damodar parties, under Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I said the other day that Tamal was there when Tamal Krishna Maharaj was there when Jayananda got his Gayatri. And Jayananda was so nervous. He knew Prabhupada, but he was, on one hand he was a strong guy, but on the other hand he was gentle, And we've all seen it happen. People forget the four-legged principles. They forget the pranam mantras. I mean, they bow down with their feet towards the deities. They just get flustered. It happens, There's something about it. So Jayananda getting his Gayatri completely, he got the string all jumbled up, and Prabhupada had to untangle the whole thing. And then he couldn't remember the mantras, So and Prabhupada said, "You are hopeless." So there's Jayananda, your spiritual masters just said you're hopeless. Tamal Krishna was thinking, I'm going to have to step in and save this situation. And then Prabhupada said, "But you are so sincere, whatever you chant, Krishna will accept." I mean, that's just, and that Prabhupada felt like that way about Jayananda, and that Jayananda was like that. That just, don't worry, whatever you do, Krishna will be, you make you're so sincere, Krishna will accept. So later on, he was in charge. Tamal Krishna Maharaj had Jayananda in charge of one of the Radha Damodar bus, but they had I think 6 buses. They were crisscrossing across America doing colleges, and each bus had like 3 or 4 Sankirtan vans full of brahmacharis distributing books. So he was in charge of one of those parties, and they were doing the Christmas marathon. For the month of December, they'd put aside the colleges and do the book distribution. So I was the Sankirtan leader in Detroit. And so, we're there, and I'd send out all the Denver, the Detroit, we had like 5 or 6 different parties. I'd sent them all out, got them all in their cars and where they're going and their prashada. So they all went out. Jayananda and I were sitting next to each other, and he got his whole group. Now, one of the devotees, who was on that party was our Prahlad Priya. Prahlad Priya. He was Bhakta Phil. He was Philly Phil because he was from Philadelphia. So I don't remember if it was him, but as he was sending everybody out, Jayananda noticed that this one devotee just had a little windbreaker. Now, in Detroit, it was like 12 degrees with a wind chill factor. It was minus whatever. Just frigid. The wind would blow off Lake Michigan. It was coming out of Alaska or wherever it was, the North Pole. Freezing cold. So Jayananda said, "That's the only jacket you've got?" The devotee said, yes. So Jayananda said, "Here, take mine." And he had this big, nice, with a hood and everything. The devotee said, "I can't take your jacket." Jayananda said, "Oh, my mom sent me an even better one. I've got a brand new one that's even better. Just take this one." So the devotee he bundled him up, gave him his lunch, off the devotee went. So after we got everybody out, then I'm going out to my Sankirtan spot. Jayananda's going out to his Sankirtan spot. We're walking out together, and I see Jayananda's wearing that windbreaker. I said, "Jayananda, come on. I thought you said you had a jacket from your mother, a better one." He said, "No, I only said that so he would take it." I said, "Forget it, Jayananda." I said, when we went, we found, in an ashram, we got him a nice jacket and some snowmobile boots and sent him out, But that was his mood. He just sent the other devotee out. He was going to somehow or other do whatever he was going to do, and told him a fib just to get the guy to agree. To give you another flavor of Jayananda, we used to have kind of a gypsy mentality. Anything that was nailed down, we would steal and use for Krishna. We would fleece people's flowers. We would, well, it all belongs to Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna. What is it? Ishavashidam Sarvam. We've learned, and we got a reputation. It was not, we were young and foolish. Rabindra Swarup said one time, in those days, early days, not only was Prabhupada the only pure devotee in ISKCON, he was practically the only adult. I mean, we were all just kids. And Prabhupada was an old Calcutta boy, as you say. Prabhupada was a very practical, saintly, mature person. And we were just kids or fools or whatever. In his sincerity to not spend Krishna's money, Jayananda Prabhu one time went into Pennies. Pennies was a big, I think it's going bankrupt now, but it used to be the America's, what do you call it, store, it's where people went and bought, general store, it's where people bought, whatever. So he goes into Penny's, and he stole a pair of pants. And he got caught. And the store detective caught him. And before he talked to Jayananda, he called the police. These hippies are fleecing everything, and here's this guy with, he had a baseball cap on, so no one recognized him. He's thinking, here's some hippie stealing, and the guy was mad, called the police. Then he started to talk to Jayananda, and Jayananda was so apologetic and explained that he was a monk, and he doesn't, and explain the whole situation, and they're trying to put on this Ratha Yatra, and they don't have any money, so he's saving every penny. The police had arrived by then. The detective told the policeman, I'm not going to press charges. This person is too saintly. I'm not going to press charges. The policeman paid for the pants, bought in the pants, said, listen, your work's too important. Mukunda Maharaj told me this story. Super smart Mukunda Maharaj, who was, the best at public relations. So, he got all the permits for the first LA Ratha Yatra. Gopal Bhatta gets credit, too, for getting that Ratha Yatra going. So, So Mukunda Maharaj, afterwards, would go around and see all the people who, he took them all, the parks lady who gave the permits, the city guy, the fire department, all those people. He would take them and something they could relate to. You take them you don't just take them wet sandesh or, they don't know what that is, You got to think. So he would always take them cookies or cakes, prasadam made by devotees. So he went to see, after that first Ratha Yatra, he went to see the lady who was in charge of the parks. And Jayananda had passed away by now. And Jayananda warned her. He said, she's a tough nut, but she did give the permit. She didn't have to, but she gave the permit. She was a fundamentalist Christian, and who are these folk? But Jayananda won her over. Mukunda Maharaj goes there to take the prasadam. She's in a hurry. She doesn't want to talk to him. She's tacking up a bunch of papers, and then finally, Mukunda Maharaj says to her, it was his last wish that we give you this cake. She stopped and said, last wish? What do you mean? And Mukunda Maharaj says, well, he passed away from leukemia. And this tough, big black mama who'd been, fought her way through the system, broke down and cried. She said he was the nicest man I've ever met. She cried. Mukunda Maharaj had to patch her back up, put her back together. So that just gives you a flavor of Jayananda Prabhu. Let's see, what else was I going to say? And then we'll do the reading tomorrow. I guess we'll just finish with two quick stories. He was here in just as a sidelight, he joined in 1967. He used to drive his taxi cab because we had no money. We really had no money in those days. And later on, when the incense business started, Jayananda, he made so many devotees just to support the temple. He took up he was the San Francisco temple incense salesman. He had his route. You'd go to all the different head shops and stuff like that. And it was a rough scene. People offering you joints and, the whole scene, And, Jayananda, you go in and come out, go in and come out. So Jayananda did it. But before that, he was driving a taxi. Because he was the only breadwinner, practically speaking, Like Rupanuga and Brahmananda worked at the welfare office because they were the only ones who had, getting a paycheck to pay the rent. So, Jayananda Prabhu, the president of the LA temple, worked as a lineman for the AT&T, fixing the phone lines, It's interesting times. So Jayananda used to drive his taxi 15 to 18 hours a day just to support the temple. And his classes, the devotees would say who he met, how, the different, people he picked up in the car and how they were suffering and, what they told him and what they, those were usually his Bhagavatam classes, would be object lessons from the material world. So here at the same time, he was taking care of 15 to 20 brahmacharis. He was the temple president, driving the taxi cab, putting on all the festivals, and taking care of 15 to 20 brahmacharis. Amazing person. So just one last thing here in SanDiego. The devotees, he had this leukemia, and the Western medicine, they'd given up. And his parents sent him $5,000 or some relative, somebody, and he was going to try this thing in Tijuana, some alternative cancer thing that's, the apricot pits and, whatever. So the devotees had encouraged him that, you should give it a try, and the money came automatically. So I thought, all right, I'll go down and try it. So he was down here in Tijuana at this, alternative cancer clinic. And we used to drive down there and take him prasadam. I would go sometimes. I think Gunagraj Maharaj went sometimes. We'd take different devotees. We'd drive him down, a couple of days' worth of prasadam, because he was down there for 2 weeks or something. And I remember I went down the second time, and it was right by Rosarita, by the beach. Not Rosarita, but Tijuana by the beaches, by the bull ring. And I drove down, and he looked like death personified. His whole body had become swollen, and he was kind of a pallid white. I mean, how he was going on, I don't even know. But, he was giving it a try. So anyway, I went to his room, and I had a nice big plate he liked watermelon. We had a nice big plate of sliced watermelon, and then I had a bunch of, we had samosas. People who knew him, people who knew him loved to cook. Just, he was such a nice guy. So I had some samosas, some, whatever it was. And went to his room. I looked through the window. He's not there. I thought, oh, geez, he's passed away. We've lost him. And that we weren't around. And I was really feeling badly. And then I noticed there was a sign, handwritten sign, Bhagavad Gita classes, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, solarium, everyone welcome. Looked at my watch, it was 10:15. He was in the solarium, it was like an enclosed area with a sun, like a sunroom, And he had, people on gurneys. He had about 15 people. He looked like death personified, weak like anything. And he was there sailing on, giving Bhagavad Gita class. You got these people in wheelchairs and crutches, hanging on every single word. And then when he got done, I brought him the plate of watermelon. He ate only half of it. I was thinking, I know that he's got a great appetite. What's the story? He could only see out of one eye. He could only see half. So I turned it, and he finished the other half. I mean, you just cannot imagine a bona fide Vaishnava saint. So we will end there. And then finally, when that was, it just wasn't working. So he finally, he said, well, let me just go to L.A. And within 2 weeks, he went up then the devotees, Gopal Bhatta Prabhu, Ramaswar, to their credit, Mukunda Maharaj, of course, took excellent care of him. And I told you how he left his body. Gloriously, So we can end there. Maybe who gives class tomorrow? All right, well, I'll check with it. We'll figure it out, and then we'll finish up, because there is this really nice pastimes by Kalakanta Prabhu. Okay, we'll end there. All glories to Jayananda Prabhu, an exemplar for us all. Thank you.